Round Veselin today. There's still some things to play for, but we already have a tournament winner.
Well, definitely, of course, tournament is decided. Although Jansai, she's not really taking part in the overall standings. So that would be actually interesting if she was participating right from the very beginning of the Grand Prix. Maybe next time, for sure she's promising young stars, and for sure she will fight in the future for the top places. But of course that's a great win for her now, and also the title.
Let's bring up the cross table so we can show you why Shansaya, she is already the winner. Well, there's only one round to go. She's got 8 points, 1.5 more than Maria Muzychuk, who's in second place, so she cannot be caught. And as you said, she got the title as well, so it's been really a fantastic tournament for her.
Fantastic, yeah. And then, but still we have, yesterday we were thinking that there could be today could be a very peaceful day, but I'm not totally sure, because some games for sure will be played. I don't think Valentina Gunina will be ashamed with the last round draw. I think she will play for winner somehow, and in a way it's also risky, because if you really only play for win, then I believe that somehow all the lines that lead to equality or that lead to a draw, they're immediately not even considered. So it means that she could be in trouble if she becomes worse, or even in equal position, she could press too much. And the other games, I think also Elizabeth Petz will, for sure it will be a fighting game. And it's our main question is what will happen in the game between Ekaterina Lachno and Muzychuk.
Absolutely. So let's remind everyone, there's 2 spots up for grabs from the Grand Prix series to qualify to the candidates tournament. Goryachkina, she finished first, but she's already qualified as the runner-up of the previous match. Then Shansaya did great, but because she was a replacement player, she is not eligible for one of the 2 spots. Hampi Koneru, she scored so great, she scored so well in the first 2 legs she played, that although she couldn't make it here, she is guaranteed a spot, and today there is one last spot up for grabs. As far as we know, we're waiting final confirmation, but Katerina Lachno with the draw will make it. The only one who could overtake her is Nana Dzagnidze, but Nana will have to win her game and Katerina would have to lose. So those are the 2 players that are fighting for that spot. I was so sure that Katerina Lachno against Maria Muzychuk would be a draw. Maria Muzychuk would secure, I think, second place in the tournament with a draw. So I thought we were heading for a quick draw there, but I was wrong, and I'm happy to have been wrong. We are going to see a fight, and let's start with that game, maybe.
Yes, definitely. It doesn't look to me like this game will be a quick draw. Of course, Katerina, she's the big favorite to be the candidate, to become a candidate, because even if she loses, which is of course not that easy playing with the white pieces, even if she loses, still we have to wait for Nana Dzagnidze for her to win with the black pieces against Gunina. So there, I guess, in that game there would be only 2 results possible. Either Valentina wins.
For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, after 10 rounds, Valentina has made no draws, which is quite incredible.
Absolutely. I mean, and somehow, I believe that the draw is not that likely in that game. But again, I don't think that Lachno should depend on that game. She should just play normally, and of course with the white places. But somehow the opening we're seeing now, well, Caro-Kann, it is a positional opening, and now the pawn structure is closed. and I think.
Let's see how we got here. So
it can be just a positional fight and a long one. So we have the Caro-Kann, and normally white goes d4 in this kind of positions. But of course, knight f3 is another option. Bishop g4, h3, and now black exchanged her bishop for the knight. Now there are two moves. The one played in the game e6, and the other move I think is to immediately place the knight on f6. So e6 allows d4 immediately, and now the difference is that if knight were on f6, then black would win a pawn. But here, white would be able to take with the queen, and after knight f6 play queen d3 or queen h4. That's a different story. So we see a move knight f6 now, and now it's a question if e5 can be played, or black is or white will sacrifice a pawn.
And I'm just sorry, Veselin, I was just typing here because I'm just receiving confirmation that a draw for Katja will be
100%
enough.
Qualification spot. Yeah, but of course, my impression here is that position will be equal maybe, but it's not going to be so easy to force the draw. I mean,
I have to say I'm very intrigued why Maria, clearly, when she played the Caro-Kann, it's a fighting choice.
I believe so.
So I'm curious because unless I'm mistaken, I think a draw for Maria would guarantee second place.
Yeah, a draw in general should be fine for Maria because Lachno is only half a point behind.
Yeah.
So if she wins, she takes the clear second place, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Gunina could catch her with a win, but Maria has won the direct encounter, so she would still be a...
Yeah, and of course, Gunina, she has to win with the black pieces against Elizabeth, of course. So, I mean...
Who knows, maybe Maria and Nana are good friends. Maybe. Would you play for a friend? Let's say if your friend has to qualify, would you fight for them?
Yes, but in fact, I don't think it has ever happened to me, you know, that... This what is actually happening now. I don't really approve that for Lachno because I think too early. I think she took on d5, and now we'll get this kind of Carlsbad structure. When of course, white is not worse, but already it is not a symmetrical position. And it will be, and of course, the knight is not so well placed on c3 in these kind of situations. So I would, if I were black, I would take with this d5 on d5 with this pawn, in order to place my knight on c6 and to attack the pawn. So the knight from c3, sooner or later, it will have to be removed. But I'm not so sure that, in fact, Caterina made a good choice.
You think it's an approach that's like too much wanting to simplify, or?
I don't know. I think there is a very, very complicated line here, starting with the move e5, when white sacrifices a pawn. But if I were white, maybe I could simply consider, the problem of course is that the pawn d4 is hanging now, so either you push or either you take. But the other options would be to play something like, for example, if bishop d2 or bishop e3, then that would not be a big deal for black, but I think the problem here is that black can still force something with the move bishop b4. So I don't know. It's critical is e5, but I don't think it's also a way to play for draw.
It's interesting. I'm also curious what Maria. Do you think the way in which she recaptures will be an indication of, if she wants to really fight, or if she's happy? Is there one move that will be, lead to much more equal?
Well, I believe now there is a simple choice, because, for example, if black takes with the e pawn, then we'll have a symmetrical position, and the queen is well placed on f3. Bishop goes to d3, so it's very easy game for white, and sometimes the king is open. So I would say it's a clearly better choice to take with that pawn, or even with the knight, although I don't like that. But keeping the important is to keep the knight on c3. So for me, it's a clear choice that black should take with the c pawn. And then, of course, we'll have the c file in the future. Sometimes, if the knight stays too long on c3, then we could have a problem with the c2 pawn in the future somehow. And of course, usually in these structures, the pawn c2 should be placed on c3 and support and protect the d4 pawn. So, but of course, once you lose time for removing the knight, you're not really fighting for an advantage, for sure not.
And there she goes. She has captured with the c pawn.
Exactly. And now,
we'll come back. We'll come back to here, and let's see maybe how Nana is getting on. So those will be the two main games we'll be following today.
See what's happened.
So let's go to the very beginning.
So we've seen a Catalan check on b4 and bishop e7. So far everything is fine. Knight bd7. Okay, sometimes white first plays c6 and then knight bd7, but in this case it's been transposition. And now, well, a move like a3 in general, I just don't understand this move so much. The only idea sometimes is that in general it's not a bad idea to exchange the black square, the dark square bishops, and it might be that.
So you're saying that the bishop from d2
could go to b4, but I'm not so sure that, for example, now after the move b6, it makes so much sense, because that would provoke the move c5, and it's in general it is useful for. Honestly, I don't like the move a3. Somehow it seems to me is a total waste of time. Well, it's not. Again, it's simply that I don't think it's the best way to
play for an advantage.
Exactly. Of course, white is still, for sure, white is not worse, but it's not a way to play for an advantage. I don't know what she has in mind.
Okay, well, we'll also come back here. For now, a quiet start, no fireworks so far, nothing too crazy. Shall we go to our tournament winner, Shanzaya Abdumalik, who is playing on the black side against Anna Muzychuk?
Yeah, well, it will be.
Let's go back also to the start.
Okay, so we've seen the martial variation of the Spanish. And now, okay, usually most of the classical old variations, black first goes with the plays first d6, and the difference is that if you castle, as in the game, after a4, you don't have the option to place your bishop on d4, on g4. Sorry. So if if black goes here, and a4 gives the option of bishop g4, and that's a different story, or even bishop d7. And after the move castling, the difference is that it gives the option for black to sacrifice a pawn. For example, if white goes c3, this is the famous martial variation, gambit, or when black sacrifices a pawn for initiative, and it has a good reputation. Also interesting person, I think Frank Marshall, as I said yesterday, these old masters, they deserve a lot of credit, because he was actually a lawyer. He was not, I don't think he was a professional. Yes, also Najdorf, he had a huge very good businessman. I think his business was insurance. So, and he was also, for a long time, he was between the best players in the world, and of course he invented the famous Najdorf. So in the game. Yes.
It's interesting that we have a Marshall, because Nigel, when he was here before he left, I think on one of the last days, he was talking about, you know, how opening theory, how there used to be some lines which had a reputation for being quite sharp and quite, you know, aggressive, and then over time they just turned into, like, more or less some of them into a forced draw, and he used the Marshall as one of these lines.
This, especially computers, I believe they're very good when calculating when position is open. Forced lines, you can really go very deep. And Marshall, in fact, even when he played in that game against Capablanca, I mean, the concept was very good, but his original idea, I think, was wrong, because I think he somehow immediately started immediately to sacrifice, and it proved to be not a good idea. But yeah, that's true. Nigel, in his World Championship match against Kasparov, he used his main weapon was the Marshall, and Gary, he never liked to accept that pawn. I think somehow, and he proved probably to be right, that black should somehow, he felt black should have this enough compensation and this dynamic. He didn't like to defend only for a pawn. And he was playing the move a4 in that match. So a4. So here b4, and white goes a5 here, not because she's going to promote her pawn, but because this move prevents the move knight a5. Right. Black, it's a good square for the knight when, for example, if you go something like this, then imagine then something like this, and then the black places her knight on c5, and then on a5, and then the pawn on c5 moves, so it gains space, and that's. That is, I think, what Gary did. But first he played d3, and after that he played a5. And a5 more or less leads to the same, I would say. There's only one difference that, but I don't think it's that important. So rook b8 was played. So here I would say, I expect the move d3 to be played. And then, well, I don't know if this move allows the move d4, maybe it gives this extra option to white, because after d4, because the pawn is on a5, if black plays d6, then it means that there's only one place for the knight. So this is something I've never seen.
It's interesting.
Sometimes the knight is not so badly placed on b5, but of course, I would say that d3 would transpose to the other lines, to the main lines after d6.
Tell me, also here in this game, I mean, I have to say I was wrong across the board today, once again. We had a team meeting this morning. We have a meeting every morning with, you know, the people working here, and I said in the meeting I would bet a lot of money, if I was a betting woman, that the game between Katerina and Maria would end in a quick draw. And also this one, I was also certain. The one between Lachno and Maria Muzychuk, I was absolutely wrong. They are playing. Here, could it be that there were some lines which, you know, which will lead to a quick draw?
I don't think so.
Right?
I don't think so.
So I was it's wrong, absolutely across the board.
It could be a good day for the spectators and a bad day for us. If it goes like this, it could be another very long day for us.
Not that we don't, of course, not that we don't enjoy being here and commentating, but tonight we have a party to look forward to. You know, there will be a dinner, the prize giving. Maybe some drinks, maybe some dancing. Will you be dancing, Veselin, tonight?
I didn't even know that.
I mean, our producers can confirm, but I think there will be some music in the bar. Yeah.
Well, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. By the way, tell me, I was just thinking, if there were a second part of the Queen's Gambit,
Yeah.
from the players here, who do you think would be the
best
Beth Harmon? Because I've been thinking, I believe that Anna Muzychuk could be...
From the resemblance.
Somehow the face,
Yeah.
yes.
I was thinking also, I think Antoinetta would be a good, no? You know Antoinetta better, of course, a lot better than I do.
No,
Just
it's
from
not
the
about
physical.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, then I would agree with you, then I think. Anna
Because the
Muzychuk.
second closer, well, I mean, dark-haired, we eliminate Zhensaya and Sadvakasova.
Yes.
And who else has a dark hair?
Bulmaga,
Yeah.
Kashlinskaya,
Yes, yeah. So we have a choice between the Muzychuk sisters,
Lizzie.
yeah, and maybe Zagnidze.
Yeah, but it's already also a bit dark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And who do you like to see as a loser of the Soviet champion?
This I'm not gonna answer. Veselin, you're not gonna trick me on the last day to say something.
No,
From
because
the players in this tournament?
No, from the men's players.
Ah, okay, then. Should he be Russian? Should
No,
he be?
not necessarily. But,
It's also a trick question.
but maybe, because I heard Ivanchuk was invited to be the, I think the...
No,
yeah.
Kasparov himself.
I think both were
Really?
considered. I think both were considered. Yeah, Gary could be. Because
Gary was
because
invited to play
I
the
think
role of
he
Borgov.
hates to lose so much that even when he has to act, only to act, I don't think he would be. It would be funny to his face.
By the way, Veselin, I heard that there is a second part coming.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's first time I hear
Yeah.
it.
I've heard
surprised
it,
it was
and I've
such-
also heard other people who heard it. So.
I wouldn't be surprised. It was very successful. So.
But I'd be curious because I think this series was based on the book.
Yeah.
So I guess if there's a second season, they will have to.
To first write a new book.
Well, no, there will be more surprises because I hadn't read the book, but for the people who read the book, it stuck quite closely, I think, to.
And also maybe
the
Judith
storyline.
could take part.
Judith would be great, of course.
Judith.
Yeah.
Why not?
Who do we? We don't have so many. Maybe Anna Rudolph. She's a bit gingerish, or Jovanka Huska. We have a few people who could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, for sure there are many that. But
Who
no,
would you have as the Soviet guy who lost against Beth?
But does he have from the all champions that were not that are not
No, from the current ones.
the current? Oh. Well, Gary, that would be fun. Maybe no, also Karpov. I mean, for sure that he's a very famous face, so that would be. But I'm not sure he would be. They both hate to lose, so.
I think from the younger, not younger generation, I think Goryachkina would be because his facial expressions. I think he would make a great actor. No.
Not so sure.
Okay.
No, Chucky would be fun, of course, for sure. Even Chucky would be fun.
But I didn't say even. I said Goryachkina.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
Goryachkina,
yeah, no, even Chuk,
Yeah.
Also, probably Smyslov. He looks.
I never.
I mean, from all champions, Smyslov looks to me like, because he has these glasses and serious, but also Botvinnik.
Yeah. I mean, Korchnoi also, when he was still alive,
All
would
of
have
them,
been
in
great.
fact, they all of them could be good losers. Or maybe not good losers, but good.
By good losers, you mean bad losers.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's go back. Let's continue our little tour here. So 3 games we have not seen yet. Where would you like to start?
Okay, let's see what's happening in the game between Elizabeth.
So let's go check it from the start.
They've had this, it's called Schlechter, I think, a Schlechter variation of the Slav defense.
Would you actually, just before we move on, final question. If you were approached and asked, would you play Borgov, would you do it?
Yeah, why not? But I don't think I would be even asked, but no, why not? No.
Would be great to see you. Maybe a small...
Honestly, I don't imagine myself.
Something, I mean, you were saying, you know, you're not streaming, you're not writing books, you're not... So you have time. Maybe acting is the way.
No, but I've been thinking about all this social media, and the problem what I see is that human brain, I don't think, is prepared to you know, to interact with so many people, and that's one of the problems I see, because and the other, of course, is I believe chess is very serious. If you really want to study it seriously, what you can do is to train and stream at the same time. Of course, for education it's good, but if you really want to study and to improve, you have to focus. And it is boring task. Where it reminds me more of a scientific work rather than it's not really fun. You have to be really concentrated and
I mean, it's hard work.
Exactly. So that's the problems. So for teaching, it's very good, and but not for improving your chess. I don't think it's so good.
I mean, because also streaming to people who are watching, often it seems like just something, you know, you do on the side, and it's fun. And yes, it is fun. But I mean, from personal experience, I stream when I'm not on the road almost every day, and it's also a lot of work. It's different work, of course, than working on your chess, but it's hard work too. And I just don't think, combining both.
No, it's
is possible.
I mean, it's fun. Simply, it's different from studying chess and improving. I
mean, of course, it depends what are your ambitions, but if you want to be the best in the world, then that should be the focus.
So what I was saying that Elizabeth against Gunina, they have this g6. Usually in this kind of positions, the pawn is placed on e6 and then the bishop goes. This is the Meran variation of the Slav, and then it's maybe a bit too early to play. It is too early to play bishop b5, f5, because then black would have problems with the b7 pawn, like here. But g6 is Schlechter, also interesting. You know, he was almost a world champion, Karl Schlechter, and finally I think he died because when one of the world wars started, he was teaching chess, and he just couldn't. He couldn't teach chess anymore, and he died in poverty. But he almost beat Lasker. In fact, I think that was this match 1910. They finished. He was leading before the last game, and he could have repeated, and he could have won the match, but he needed maybe an extra win. I don't remember what their conditions were. So finally the match was even, only a 10 games match, and Lasker retained the title. It was one of the matches, I think they shouldn't even be considered world championship matches, which played under such conditions. So here it is a solid opening, I would say, here, and then bishop e6. I think Kamsky used to play this line. Another line is to play bishop g4, or first to take like this, and then play bishop g4. This is the other option. When white, black exchanges her bishop, for example, something like this, and then plays knight bd7. We did to play e5. But bishop e6, Kamsky, I think he invented this, and I don't remember whether it was queen b3 main move or b3. I think he had his tricks here. Or knight g5 also possible.
Lizzie decided to go for queen b3.
Okay, queen b3.
And queen b6 was played, which I think is very often the standard.
Yes. So queen b6 is good sometimes, and especially I would say, let's say, queen b6 would be a mistake, because the rook now is very active, and then this pawn structure is extremely good for black, but queen b6 is only good when previously the pawns have been exchanged like this, and then you would have a weak pawns here and double pawns on b7 on b6. But if the pawn is on 6-6, the pawn is on 6-6, for example, in this case, black would take with the knight, with even maybe already with slightly better position, because the pawn on a2 is attacked, and then, as I said, pawn is here on c6 and b6, and that black would be able to advance the pawn, so it's a very good position. So
Elizabeth has decided not to trade queens. She has played queen a3.
Yeah, attacking the pawn on
e7.
e7. I'm not. Well, probably it could be that she actually prepared this, so it makes sense to, for example, here if black takes, I believe her idea is to go knight g5, one of the options, or the other option is to take, which I'm not so sure, because if white takes, she loses too much time, I believe, and then this pawn can be protected, and there are good dynamics for black. So I believe, or maybe knight e5 collects the pawn back, but I think knight g5 is the critical move now. We'll see.
Interesting. We'll come back
but
to this.
It doesn't look like to me that this is going to be.
We're not going to have. I apologize to everyone I might have jinxed. I think we will have absolutely 0 quick draws today. Everyone is looking to fight it out. But I also think that in a way, now that I see that all the boards have fighting games, I think these days, in the middle of the pandemic, it makes more sense. I think in general we see, not just in this event but in others, less quick draws because there is less tournaments. Very often, the last round the players are already thinking about the next event and maybe but now there is just so few games that I think really the players are happy for every game they can play.
I guess you're right. Yeah. But in general, what I honestly I haven't followed women's chess so closely. But my impression is that mostly women fight more than they have less prearranged draw or quick draw than men, for sure. And well, that's my impression. So I'm not really surprised.
Yeah, I agree. I fought on the last day, not because I didn't think they don't want to play anymore. I really thought this Lachno Muzychuk, I thought a draw suits them both. That's what I thought. I also thought that Kashlinskaya, she's won the tournament. They're great friends. But as I say, I'm very happy to have been proven wrong, and great to see everyone coming out for a fight today. Also better that way, because I was thinking, imagine if we have 4 or 5 quick draws and we have to commentate just on one game the whole day.
Valentina's game.
So better for us to have all the games to look at. There's 2 games we haven't seen yet. Shall we start with Dinara Sadvakasova and Irina Bulmaga?
Yeah, it's also King's Indian with Fianchetto, I think. Well, I don't know if the idea of Bulmaga's idea was to go Grunfeld or King's Indian, but of course here we have this line with c6 and bishop f5, and now knight g5 is one of the lines that is the idea of course of the bishop f5 move is to prevent the white from advancing to e4. So I don't remember if it was knight e1 here, like the critical one of the main moves, with the idea to play e4 or rook. But I believe that rook e1 would leave. Almost certainly black would play knight e4, again preventing. And that would be a good exchange actually for black for sure, because again we prevent the white pawn advancing to the center, and of course now we have this bishop open, so in general it's a good good exchange. That would be a good exchange. And knight g5 is one of the critical moves, I think, because it is a knight, for example. I wouldn't say that's a big improvement for black if you have the pawn on h6. It's more weakness rather than a useful move here now. So we've seen knight g5 and e5, d5, and a5. Okay, so after the move a5, I believe that h3 was played because
h3 was played, yes.
Because the idea is that probably what Sadvakasova didn't want, probably she just didn't want to see bishop g4 attacking the queen, and that explains the move.
Just take away the square on g4.
It doesn't change much, because anyway at some point the bishop has to go back to d7. And now taking, so I don't know if this is okay, but I don't see a reason why this
even queen
takes, and here in general, of course, this pawn is weak and white structure is better. We only have to look at the dynamics, because white, well, I prefer white, but black has certainly some chances with jumping with the knight on d4, b4, so it's...
I mean, even this game, it's really great to see a fight. Both players had a tournament to forget. They are in 9th and 10th place, respectively. And I think very often, you know, the players are happy to just get this tournament over with. But no, we really have fight everywhere.
Yeah, it's not going to be the case.
Yeah.
They'll just play. So that's one of the games we were not following. And
the last one is Stefanova.
Again, Antoaneta. So, yeah, okay. I think, let me see, because when I was a kid, I knew all the names of all these variations, but now I just know the moves. But so, okay, okay, here, knight b7, so h6, let's say, taking on d4, it's called the Botvinnik variation.
On c4, yeah.
h6 is called the Moscow variation, and I think here, if white takes, this is the structure of the Karlsbad structure, but white doesn't have to play to take immediately, and I think in the game e3 was played, and this is called, if I'm not wrong, the variation of Cambridge Springs. So
yes, that's true.
So it's interesting. So there are two moves here. I think one is when white takes the pawn. Well, the idea, of course, when you play queen a5, the idea is to jump on the next move on e4, no, with the knight. So the knight is pinned here by the queen, and of course then sometimes white also goes like this. So there are two moves. Either white takes on d5 and then knight takes, or yeah, I think this is the main move, or knight d2, and this is a move because now we see that knight e4 is not so good anymore, because we already have another knight on d2. So bishop b4 makes sense here. What is one of the moves as played.
That was played, yeah.
And so here, this is considered a bit passive, similar to what the position of, I think yesterday when Sadvakasova played against, which was again...
It was Sadvakasova against...
Gunina?
Against Gunina, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's similar, but in that game we had the pawn from, not on g3, but on f4. So I think there are many classical games, but okay. Structure is very similar when white goes g3, bishop g2, or plays the bishop on f3. It's same, very similar situation. Slight advantage for white, or maybe not even an advantage. So it used to be considered slightly better for white, but it's never that much.
It's actually interesting. So fight on all the boards, but on average, pretty quiet positions. We haven't had, any, like neither of any, nothing really sharp everywhere.
Not sharp, yeah.
Everywhere is, more positional and quiet, and it will come.
Well, exactly, but
to life a bit later. Oh,
it can also quickly become very.
But I see that we do have in the game between Katerina Lachno and Let's Go Back and Maria Muzychuk, we see opposite side castling, which is always, that's exciting.
Oh. Whoa.
That's very exciting.
So what has happened was that
this
Maria,
is as far removed from a quick draw as it gets. I haven't been so wrong in a long time.
Well, I believe we should both stop making predictions. In fact.
I had a good run, Veselin. I had a good run in our predictions. I should have quit while I was ahead.
Okay.
Actually, we didn't predict. Let's predict quickly. How many decisive?
It's a very bad moment to predict. How many draws you think?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see.
Let me answer. Today is a tricky one.
I guess
I will let you guess first, so that you cannot blame me.
I take 3 draws. Anyway.
I was going to do the same. I was going to do the same, but now I have to change, yeah?
Because somehow it is true that all the games, there are no quick draws, but it's also true that so far nothing really is happening. Like games are quite balanced.
But now I have to, because I can't take the same as you, so now I have to choose between 4 decisive or 2 decisive. That's a tough. You know what? It's the last day. Let's have a gamble. I will say 2 draws only, 4 decisive.
Well, that's a reasonable guess. I would say. Also.
We will
Maybe
see.
I was too optimistic, but we'll see.
Yesterday we were both wrong. Let's see if one of us at least. But I mean, the ladies, they're so unpredictable. It's hard to.
I know. I live with 3 girls at home, so. No.
You never know what's gonna. So you know it well, Veselin. So let's see what happened here. After c takes d5, we left the game.
But that's also the charm, you know.
The beauty of it, like in this tournament.
So, okay. Okay, so let's just focus on Lachno's game. Knight d2. Yeah, here, as I said, it makes sense to remove the knight from c3 and to defend the pawn on d4. Okay, I don't think white really fights for big advantage here, but it's also true that these positions remind me the positions from when black has similar structure, plays with the black pieces. Something like this, it's called Ragozin, when maybe white is even a tempi up in this line. So queen c7, it is a very interesting option. I was also considering, because in general it is good idea to exchange the light square bishop. What if white jumps on b4 with the idea to exchange this bishop, because check would just we still attack this pawn.
And if I go bishop a4?
Yeah, but that's different, because somehow the bishop is not so well placed on. It is probably the correct way, but probably it's not such a great idea for white, because b4, b5, and white can just go bishop b3 and followed by c3, so, and still we have the bishop here. But it was just an idea. Bishop g6, it just can't be a bad move. And queen c7, bishop g5, knight d7. So far, so good. Well, another way to equalize for black here is to push the pawn on e5 at some point, and that would create a situation where white would have black would have this weak pawn on d5. If but then many times it's not really enough. So okay, but of course after bishop g5 you can't do that, and here she returned. It is the idea to return of course is that because the pawn on f7 is hanging, you can't really castle long side now. Here and rook f e1 and long castle. Well, if I were playing white, I would maybe even consider to start, because it's clear that now black can't castle short, because that would be a mistake. Oops, sorry. So that would be a mistake to castle short, because immediately white wins a pawn.
Nicely, let's just show the tactics until the end. So in case of castles, bishop takes, and if black recaptures,
when
the knight
white
is hanging.
wins a pawn.
It's probably not just a pawn. It's
also
much more than a pawn. H6 will drop.
Is hanging. So, so now it becomes clear that after rook e1 almost forces black to castle long side. But if black castles long side, that also means that maybe the rook, there were other more useful moves rather than rook e1. I would consider also rook c1, because short castling would still be a mistake.
Because bishop h6 is still there.
Still the same problem. It doesn't matter if the rook is on e1 or f1. That would still lose the pawn, and if black castles long, then I might consider to play c4, and that's much. I mean, the rook on c1 is more useful than rook e1, because imagine black takes, then I would take like this,
and the c5
already double, and that becomes very white is very quick.
One of the things that of course I'm a lowly patzer, but one of the things that I always feel if I feel they're going to castle. If they're going to castle queenside, so here in this position you said rook ac1, I absolutely agree with you. I'm tempted to just push some pawn already in case they are going to castle. Would a4 make any sense here? Or?
Yeah, but yeah, of course. But sometimes even if you push your pawn on a6,
nothing will happen.
It would take 3 moves, and and in fact, you don't really open the position like this. For example, I would say, but it's an option. I would say you could go like this, and I don't believe this is always a good idea. It is an option.
It is an option to take it, but
it is in fact, because here, let's say, white takes the pawn on a7, but then of course this light square bishops is really important, and then the bishop is worse than black's, and only one rook doesn't make a big deal.
Yeah, if we could bring the bishop to
But of course, and the knight is a bit passive, so I don't know. And of course, black doesn't have to take. And sometimes, of course, the typical
break in the center.
Yeah, so you lose too many.
Okay, and interestingly, after castles, she still played c4 even without the rook on c1, and Maria has just captured that.
Yeah, but of course, in that case, I would say that would be much better if we had the rook
on c1, of course.
The rook prepared on c1 and to take with the rook, because here, okay, for the moment, let's say that this move would be a big mistake. Not on, let's say here, because rook takes d4 would lose, I think, to bishop e6 and rook c1, so we lose a queen.
And
well, I don't know.
Rook c4, we can just
d2. Maybe I just go something like this. So we.
And if rook c4.
Rook c2, you mean? Oh, sorry. Because rook c7 is queen c7, and somehow somehow black has two rooks, a rook and two pieces for the queen. So honestly, I doubt that's a good idea, but of course it has to be checked, because the two bishops are hanging. Well, of course, it is better to play maybe just rook c1 immediately, because taking on c4 doesn't really win a piece.
Because of rook c1
so
in the end.
Of course, it doesn't. These are easy tricks to see for a professional chess player, and I expect a move like king b8. It is almost automatical move in this kind of positions. What else could happen? I don't think exchanging the bishop makes a lot of sense here, because then white takes, and again we have the same problem. So king b8 is the move that I would expect.
Who would you rather play here, white or black?
Well, for sure white is not worse. So, and black has to be careful, because white's move are in fact easy. King b8, and then of course rook c1.
Yeah,
so
king b8 has just been played.
And rook c1 is the easy move. And of course we already have a positional threat, bishop b5. So it means that a move like, you have to find a good place for the queen. But if you go, let's say, queen b6, then I would still continue to attack. So not so easy. And two bishops with open position. The only compensation for white is that the pawn on d4 might become weak at some point, but also the square d5. But I don't think it compensates the problems, because, for example, now knight d5 could be a move, but then it's a problem.
With this pin along the c file.
So for sure, if there's one side that plays for an advantage, I believe there's still white. King b8. Oops, sorry. King b8. So for the moment, I don't see any problem for Lachno. She's probably a bit better, and don't see her as in danger of losing this game for the moment.
But a very exciting, I mean, quite double-edged, of course. When the kings are castled in opposite directions, it always leads to very fighting games. So we'll come back here and let's see. I mean, Nana will be very happy to see a fight on the other game, which means she is still in with a chance. Let's remind everyone, for the last spot that's up for grabs for the candidates, all that Katerina Lachno needs is a draw, but if she were to lose, Nana could overtake her with a win.
We have let's see a bit what has happened in that game. As I said, the idea of the move a3 is to exchange the light square.
Oh, let's go quickly to Abdumalik. Sorry, Veselin. Let's go quickly to Anna Muzychuk and Abdumalik, because I think they are repeating the moves. So I think we will see a handshake now.
So after the move rook b8, c3 was played. The idea of the move c3 is to, I guess, it is to immediately play d4, but that would be a mistake, I believe, because after taking, for example, something like this, bishop g4 immediately starts to, to attack both the pawn on d4, but also the knight. The bishop is sometimes hanging on b3, for example. So d3, and this position is very well known, and in here there've been several games with the move d4. I believe it was during the candidates. Caruana played against Dink-Liren. Dink-Liren has defended this position several times. He knows this position
and now
pretty
I think
well. And knight g4 defends the pawn on a5, queen e8, h3. Yeah, so a very typical maneuver, placing the queen on g6, and then, looks like they're repeating.
Yeah, that's it. We have a handshake.
Okay, so one.
And we have our first result of the day. This one, yeah, we thought we might. I mean, Shanzaya has already won the tournament, and yeah, well.
Okay.
One game down.
I already.
5 to go. Yeah, for me, it's not so good news. Only one more draw I can afford, but we'll see. All the others, I don't see any other draws on the horizon on another game, but we will see.
Let me see. Well, let's say the game. No, for sure. If there'll be draws, there'll be fighting draws now. Let's say this looks to me Gunina.
Yeah, so let's go. We just came from here.
Yes.
Sorry, I took you away to see the end of Abdumalik's, and there we just see our champion walking out of the playing hall for the last time, and just one more time. I mean, 8.5 out of 11, undefeated. What a tournament it has been for Shanzaya. Simply incredible.
Yeah, she's really played. She's been a bit lucky in sub games, but in order to get such a result, of course, you need also luck in at least in one game. So, Gunina, she's exchanged her dark square bishop, and it's a bit of a surprise for me now, because of course because the pawn is on a5 here, and then that creates a weakness of the b5 square. So I would rather play knight c3. It is very obvious that the square, that's a better square for the knight rather than the one on d2. Instead, well, it keeps, of course, here white keeps options for the
Veselin, we forgot to check if Shanzaya ate the chocolate bar.
Oh.
We will have to ask her tonight that we forgot to check.
I'm certain she didn't.
She didn't have time, yeah?
At least not in front of the camera.
Not while we were there, yeah.
Maybe now she's eating it.
Maybe she will enjoy it now. It's nicer to enjoy after the game. Then
we could send someone to check.
We will take a break very soon anyway. Okay. We can go and investigate.
What I'm saying that the knight on d2, I don't like it as much as on c3, bishop a6. White's played quite harmlessly, I would say, but it doesn't mean that white is worse. I mean, so rook c8, another option would be, I would say, to play with the other rook. And queen a4 creates the idea of c4. So the white's idea is to play b4, sorry. And then the bishop is hanging, so okay, we'll see.
We've had just one more move, and Nana played queen to d6.
Yes, it's a solid move. What if I push with the simple idea to win the pawn? Okay, most likely it won't happen because of queen c6. I believe this is her plan. That means that this kind of exchange might happen, and then let's say here a move like knight b3 makes no sense because of a4. So no, I don't see any problems.
But this would be very equal, no? Or can any?
Well, not necessarily, because again, I don't like the knight. Sometimes this symmetrical positions. This position is actually symmetrical, but if you think so. The bishop is on g2 is not really active, and I prefer the one on a6. So from also black has if black gains control on the c file, that would be a serious advantage for black.
Valentina, by the way, has just played b4.
Okay, so I expect the move queen c6 to be played.
Valentina is staying true to the way she's been playing throughout the tournament. She's only spent, 10 minutes on the clock. I had breakfast with her this morning. She's still in high spirits. It's hard to break her spirit, Valentina. She's not so easy to bring down. She's had of course, tough few rounds, but she, I think, you know, she will be fighting again.
But still she has to be a bit careful because imagine Queen C6, and then if she wants to exchange and play, for example, a move like, for the moment, because the pawn on E2 is hanging, white is not able to, you know, to play the move Rook C1 because she would lose a clear pawn. And some positions when, if she wants to play something like, imagine something like Rook B1 with the idea to play B5, then take, then these positions, because the knight is not so well placed on D2 and because black controls the C file, I would even say black has chances to play for win. You know, so it's not entirely clear. Okay, of course, they move like knight E5. Maybe it's still closer to equality, but it will be still some play. You know, here it's easy to become even here. It's still never late to lose.
Of course. Veselin, let's get your quick assessment just of the current position on the 3 other, or let's quickly catch up on the 3 other games and then we will take our first break of the day. So quick assessment, let's start with which one of the 3? Sadvakasova, Kashlinskaya or Petz?
Okay, Sadvakasova, well that's, I prefer white here a bit.
Why?
Because you know, for example, now white has a positional threat. That's first, and sometimes
so
because
the positional threat you're talking
is to take on C5 and to black's is posed a bit. But in fact, maybe I'm wrong because okay, it is very obvious that a move like Rook C8 will be played, and then maybe knight B5, because you know the squares here are a bit weak, but it doesn't mean much for the moment. Of course, Rook C8 has to be played, and then I don't know. Well, so the idea of the move Bishop E3 and combined with H3, sometimes the idea is to keep the square E4 for the knight for white's knight. That means that we could see a move like G4 in the future. So let's say the logical move here is...
Sorry, let me just...
yeah, the logical move is Rook C8 here, for example. It is also a question what's wrong with H6 first, but if white plays knight B5 with the idea to play G4, of course in that case black would first play H6, and my dream of placing the knight on E4 will disappear. So black looks like fine here also, but I don't know what. Okay, and especially if black's able to place, you know, the pawn to B5 and then B4, black would be fine. Let me see, for example, such a position. If white plays something like knight E4 in the future, then that would mean that both many knights will be exchanged, and then because the pawn is here, then black can launch some strong counterplay with F5.
So do you revise your first assessment?
Yes. I don't get this position for the moment. It's just very complicated, even for me. And then a position which I believe is quite quiet for the moment is the one between Antoaneta and Kashlinskaya. Nothing really is happening. It will be white is maybe still a bit better, but it's also true that black is extremely solid, placing her rooks to D8 and F8.
I'm regretting my prediction. I should have gone for only 2 decisive, maybe only 1. 4 was insanity on my part.
You said 4 too. You
Oh,
said
maybe.
no, you said
Maybe
two
I
draws.
said 4 draws.
No, you said two draws.
No, I know. I said 2 draws, but I was saying I regret it. I think we will have a more quiet day. But we
I'm
will
not
see.
sure. I'm not sure. I think that one of us will win, but we'll see. So this looks quite solid. Of course, it's a question if black is going to be able to equalize with the move c5 in the future. So nothing is really happening. This is still theoretical position. Slightly better for white or equal. Yeah.
And
difficult to break.
And finally, the game Elizabeth Petz and Gunina Mamadzada.
Yes. Yeah. This is. I think black is fine, but. So what's been happening that the last move.
Should we go back just a couple of moves that we missed?
When I set Queen A3, that black takes on c4, that I was expecting a move by like knight g5, but in that case, the usual reaction is many times a move like bishop d5, and when the bishop is attacked, black also attacks. So what would happen here is that white takes on d5, and white also takes on g5. So we have here both pawns hanging, so looks like fine for black to me now.
Okay, so that's, well, a lot of fighting games. We are also, by the way, going to try, hopefully it will work technically, but we're going to connect to India to have a video interview with Hampi Koneru, who has, we would have loved to have her here, but she's still qualified, so hopefully everything works out fine, but that's something we're going to be working on, so very exciting. And we are going to go now on our first short break, but a lot more action to look forward to in the latest stages of this 11th and final round. Reminder, this event, the Queen's Festival, is coming up. It's starting in just 9 days. For all the information about this great event, supporting women's chess, there will be games will be played, there will be lectures. Head on over to queensfestival.fide.com for all the information, and we will see you guys shortly. Hello and welcome back to round 11, the final round of this FIDE Women's Grand Prix here in Gibraltar. We've had only one game that's over so far, 1.5 hours into the round. That's the game between Anna Muzychuk and Shansaya Abdumalik. That has ended in a draw. Other than that, everyone is playing. We have fighting positions all over the place, and there is still the all-important one candidate spot that is up for grabs. It's between Katerina Lachno and Nana Zagnitsa and Veselin. We're going to go back to Nana's game because Nana seems to be in quite good shape.
Oh yeah, definitely. Let's return where we left. You know, what has happened was that after Queen D6, as I said, Valentina Gunina played the move B4, and I expected Queen C6, you know, to offer the exchange of the, you know, of the queens. Yeah. Instead, Knight E4 was played. It's also a move that makes a lot of sense because I think Black's knight was going to C3. So anyway, it's a good question. What would have happened here, for example, because Knight C3 and knight takes E2 doesn't really change. Well, it changes, but it's not. I don't see a big deal for Black here because the knight is a bit away. And in general, of course, now if Black exchanges, I would rather prefer White somehow because there's a lot of there are a lot of tricks for White, like Bishop F1 and some problems with the Black's coordination. So, in my opinion, a valid option was taking on on A5, and it's a question what would have Zagnidze prepared. Instead, Valentina took on E4, and now what has happened is that this forced sequence of moves, knight D2, queen takes D4, attacking the knight on D2, and after knight taking on E4, Black was able to win a very important pawn. And it's not only that Black takes this pawn, but also it prevents White from going to D1. Yep. So it looks like there are many options for White, but in fact, because the rook on A1 is hanging, White has to lose tempi. And because also Black is quite quick with the idea of going from the knight on D7 to E5 and then to F3 maybe. So what happened is that White attacked the rook on the bishop on E2. Bishop D3 looks like only move, and now again we still have this pin, and it's also true that the knight is looks like the knight on D7 is also hanging, and it makes all the sense for Black to jump to place it on E5, where it would defend the bishop on D3, and also that would prevent white's going
Let's
to...
show that, because bishop 95 was played.
Yes, 95 was played, but let's say knight f6 would have been a mistake, because let's say bishop f1 would be quite strong, or other moves. I don't know, maybe queen d1 first looks to me even stronger, and then rook e3 wins the... So after 95, I don't see immediately how could white...
So let's just show you saying now we cannot play bishop f1, of course, because of the big fork.
Exactly.
Knight f3.
And there's no way to threaten the knight from e5 by f4, for example, because the pawn is pinned, you know. Yep. So I expect a move like, for example, like this, maybe. So in this case, for example, a nice trick or a bad trick for black would be to play bishop c2 with the idea that if white takes the queen, then bishop takes a4, still attacking the rook on a1, but in that case I believe white wins by taking queen c2 first, and then
let's show the problem is if black takes the queen, we take on
like
d4,
this, and we have a clear piece up for white and winning. So black has to, I mean, I'm expecting white to play the move rook d1, although it's not clear what exactly why white wants to do immediate for the moment. I don't see a immediate threat again.
Yeah, so it looks like if Nana can hold out the position together, and for now we're not seeing a way for white to capitalize on this pin.
It looks like it shows black is fine, but it's also not so easy to make a move for black here.
That's
I mean,
true.
and it's only a pawn. It's not like a piece, you know. Black is completely fine, maybe better, but it's
Nana,
not 100%.
I mean, she couldn't hope for much more with the black pieces.
Yeah, but again, the feeling of having, because now we maybe understand that black is fine, but over the board sometimes it looks totally different.
Of course.
Sometimes we have very subjective evaluation of what is really happening on the board, and again, for example, move like queen c4, the natural desire to unpin doesn't work because white has this fork with the knight. So still many ways to go wrong for both sides.
Of course. And for Nana, so I'll keep reminding you throughout the day, for Nana to qualify to the candidate's turn, she has to win her game and Katerina Lachno has to lose. So let's go and see how Katerina Lachno is doing in her game against Maria Muzychuk.
Well, so far, actually, it's not only she's far away from losing, but I think she has a certain pressure and more or less.
You mean Katerina has a...
Exactly. Yeah. I see her playing very well for the moment.
Let's go back. We only missed.
After rook ac1, queen a4, after rook ac1, queen a5 was played. Well, no, sorry. Queen b6 was played first, sorry. Attacking the pawn on d4 and the pawn on b2. Bishop e3, logical. Still, you know, attacking d5. Of course, a big mistake would have been if black took the pawn on b2, because then rook attacks the queen, and if queen a3, in that case, white could simply take the knight on c6, and then this is simply not possible because
the pawn is pinned
by the rook. But the idea of the move queen b6 was not to, of course, to take, but just to have this square for the queen on a5. And now knight c3, it's a good place for the knight, of course, and the idea is to, at some point, play this d5. Although, for the moment, of course, it's not a real threat, but white doesn't have to hurry. a6, well, honestly, I don't know. It's a difficult position for black, and it's not so easy what exactly to do, because you can't really move your knight here, the pawn is hanging, and white doesn't have immediate threats to play moves like d5 because, for example, now a move like d5 would lose a pawn after knight attacks the queen and then exchange the very important bishop on here, and then we'll lose this pawn on d5. So it makes absolutely no sense, but of course white doesn't need to do that. I like personally a move like a3. Maybe also a good move is to play rook d1. I like a3 because sometimes b4 can be a very strong idea.
By the way, there's a question in the chat. If Lagno draws her game and Nana wins, they are tied. That is true. So if Katerina draws, Nana wins, in terms of Grand Prix points, they will have the same amount of points, but Katerina does indeed have the better tiebreak. So the tiebreak is the amount of points scored in each of the 3 legs. So let's say Katya scored 7 points and 6 points. Actually, I think we have all the cross tables. We won't bring them up now. But basically, Katya has scored more points in the 3 tournaments combined than Nana. So that's the tiebreak. So that's why Katya only needs a draw. And yeah, there we see our cross table once again. I mean, I always have to look at the top. Shanzaya, 8.5 out of 11, the only player to remain unbeaten. And just, yeah, one more time, a huge congratulations to her. Veselin, let's go and check elsewhere. What else do we have? Where would you like to go?
Well, let's see. For example, the game between Elizabeth Petz. What has happened is that after knight e5, queen a6, it was a good reaction for black. I think black has good game. I don't know, but even my impression is that black can start thinking about playing for win, because after the exchange somehow I don't know if white is worse, but as you see, already black has this development, and she was able to free with the move c5. I'm also not 100% sure about this move, because another option, simple option, was to go rook d8 and c5 next, and I don't see a way to stop a move like c5. For example, rook d5, rook d1, c5, d5. In my opinion, it could be that this favors black, the inclusion of rook d1 and rook d8. But instead she decided to play c5, and of course taking would for sure not be a good idea for white, because very easy game. Black's knight is really well placed on c5. It can jump to d3, to this square, and then of course easy moves for black, rook c8, rook d8. So if white wants to do anything, then d5 is the move. The knight on c4 is well placed, but of course it can be removed by b5. And let's say if white takes, then we would have knight d5. When the knight on c4 is well played, but of course black's next move could be simply knight b6, exchanging it. So I don't think it's a problem for black, but again, I would think about moves like rook d8 first. As I said, that would, for example, if black starts with the move rook d8, attacking the pawn, white has a choice between defending the pawn with the rook or pushing her pawn to e4. And in that case, we would have, let's say, an exchange of a pawn from b5 and not d5, but e4 in this case. And here, I don't know, because a position like this, it somehow...
It's messy. What is
I
this?
prefer, concretely, black would simply take because it's...
There's the back rank.
Tactics work for black, problems, so it's nothing to be afraid of. So after rook f8, as I said, 2 options only. e4, rook d1. Maybe rook d1 is a bit more clever. Because here, if the pawn on e5, e4 falls, then it means that we also have this problem with the pawn on d5 and also rook b8 sometimes. So the pawn on d4 is on d5 is probably weaker than the one on e7, for example. I don't know, but yeah, it's maybe dynamic equality, but it's certainly not that equal.
No, far from it. Far from it. And let's go to Alina Kashlinskaya and Antoaneta Stefanova.
Yeah, in fact, in that game, nothing is really happening for the moment. They're just regrouping their pieces. Here we saw this. b4 is a very typical move that stops the move b5, c5, and bishop e8 looks a bit passive because somehow, of course, normal square in these positions is to fianchetto, the bishop. But I think the black's idea is to not create a weakness on the c5, c6 pawn, and just to stay. So bishop f3 and now knight d5. Sometimes black can also play f6 and bishop f7, although it's not always good, but that's an option. Personally,
and then with the idea to push e5, or just
maybe
to put the bishop
maybe
there?
The bishop on g6. Although I don't like that because it weakens here. So here, if I were white, I would probably prefer to keep the knights, not to exchange the knights. For example, knight e2 is a move I like, followed by g3, or maybe e4, e5 sometimes, with the idea, to close the position when the bishop would be just passive, And this bishop, if the bishop on e8 is passive, that it can only become active if the pawn is placed on c5, but that's not so easy. So that's personally what I would have done probably. Although if other moves are also possible, and the exchange of the rooks, of course, it gives some slight advantage for white, but I don't know if it's better to keep the knights. Of course, one of the rules is that generally when the side that has a space advantage should avoid exchanges, and that is why I would probably consider also a move like knight e4 or knight e2, because the knight on e4 prevents the pawn e3 to
but actually,
advance.
knight e4 is the move that was played.
Yeah, it is a good move, of course. Also, a good place for the knight is d3, but so the idea of the move knight e4 is sometimes maybe to place the knight to d3 to c5, but I would play maybe
Antoaneta already played rook 8 to c8.
Yeah, I think Antoaneta, she has a simple strategy. It's always a useful move, But for example, here, if white goes the move I suggested, then maybe black is already, ready to
push. Yeah.
Exactly. And then this exchange, a good positional idea and a good positional structure in this kind of situations is when white is able to push the pawn to b5, but not in this case. It happens with the bishop on b7, but certainly not with the bishop on e8. So here, after rook c8, if the move knight c5 is not a really so dangerous, it means white has to do something else. No, I mean, again, I think I would have played probably knight to e2.
To e2 instead.
Just to have the idea to advance the pawn to e5, e4 and e5. I believe that's the plan, but that's also not so easy, as I said, because even if you go something like this and you prepare, even that kind of positions. Imagine we do all that. Still, we have this problem with c5. Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back here. Let's quickly check in with Dinara Sadvakasova and Irina Bulmaga, see what has been happening there.
Yes. Well, in fact, I liked. I mean, this is a position so I don't really understand so much. I have to admit.
Let's go back.
There are many options. What I expected the move Rook c8 to be played. Instead, b6 was played. You know, so and in fact, White's plan was interesting because White didn't even wait for h6 to be played and to chase the knight. You know, so instead, knight f3 was played. Here, bishop d7 was played by Bulmaga. I would consider the move knight e4 because it is, in general, it's a good idea to exchange the knight from f8, f6 to e4 because that would ease the advance of the f7 pawn, and then if Black wants to create some counterplay, then of course she has to push.
F5, yeah.
Bishop d7 was played, knight d2, eyeing to c4, and now after rook b8, I would personally consider the move a4 myself, you know, because that would secure, first of all, okay, also a very normal question is why didn't she attack the pawn on d6? Let's say that's first question, and if Black defends with this, then I would go like this probably. So a move like b4 is a threat, and if Black goes b5, then knight takes a5 is strong, or knight takes d6 is strong. So
let's see that.
Yeah,
so knight takes
d6. So,
nice, yeah.
So knight c4 looked to me very natural move. I don't understand why it was not actually played. Well, it's not that a3 is bad, but b5 stops the move knight c4. And of course, the only idea of playing b5 is a3 is of course now to play the move b4. So imagine here. And I believe it is better to place the knight on a4 now. It is not a perfect place for the knight, but and here, for example, if White exchanges and attacks, we have a pass pawn here, but
I guess Black should defend.
Yeah, if you defend, then the pawn is attacked. Still, White looks like White is still better, of course, because I would go knight a5, and if you take, then even with the pawn up, I would say White is still better for White. But
I mean, the pawn on c6 looks very, very scary.
So maybe a3 is not bad, but for example, here, if instead of knight a4, knight a6 is played, then it attacks, you know, the pawn, but the knight in general is more passive on just the simple move queen b3. It shows some advantage to White. Although maybe this is better than what I said. Maybe it is better than knight a4.
In the game, so Dinara. No, sorry. So sorry. No, Dinara is she's still thinking in this position.
Yeah.
I
think she played knight a4, no?
Well, Black played knight a4. Yeah.
So Bulmaga played knight a4.
Yeah, Dinara is thinking.
So because here the other option is not to take on a4, but to place the knight on e4 in order to attack. And here, which also looks good, but I'm afraid that here, for example, taking with the knight allows a move like knight going to b2 and then to c4. That's one option. Or even trying to exchange the bishop, the knight. So after knight e4, there are several good. But I personally like to take and to attack. I mean, the natural, I believe when chess player thinks, the first moves that occur to him or to her are the attacking moves. And of course the moves when you exchange pieces. So knight c4 is the move that, and the pawn on d6 is really important. I just might add that here a move like bishop takes h3 is not so good, because it looks like black wins a pawn, but now the queen and the rooks are
both rooks.
attached.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge skewer. Yeah.
So it doesn't work, and the pawn is very important, and not only the pawn on d6, but next move is bishop c5. And I don't think, for example, this is so good for black, because I don't see that pawn going. Yeah. I mean, we can also play a move like knight b7 and take the rook on f8. So looks like the pawn d6 has to be defended, and if black goes like this, for example, still we place our knight to c6, and it's a very important square.
Okay, so we'll come back here as well. Let's start our tour from the beginning again. Let's go first to Valentina Gunina, where we started after coming back from the break. So I think we only had a couple of moves. So Nana played, if we just go back a couple of moves.
Yes, after knight e5, rook, I could guess the move rook e d1, and now h6. What I said that it doesn't look like she has, concrete threat for